Welcome back, Budget Gamer fans. Today we're going to be taking a look at an indie game called Eekeemoo. Now, despite it being $5, you better get ready to buckle up because this game is rough. With really exaggerated load times and static storyboard elements forecasting gameplay for you, I really couldn't help but remember the days when video games came on floppy disks and you played them on DOS. Back then, game design and game design standards weren't even a thing, so the best you could get was whatever you could get. And nobody could generally complain because there were no options to pick from. But in this day and age, with gaming being one of the most popular trends out there and so many developers, indies, mega corporations, AAAs, and a wide variety of consoles to choose from, you'd think that people would put a little more time into development and polishing of their games before they actually put them out there for someone to spend money on. And even though Eekeemoo does actually follow a lot of the classic genre stereotypes for open adventure, such as fantasy environments like forests, volcanoes, mountains, and fields, with massive end-of-world bosses and multiple party members to choose from, it fails so devastatingly hard at absolutely everything. Rapid introductory panning through the beginning of levels is actually somewhat disorienting because you don't know what you're supposed to be doing in that level in the first place. So instead of forecasting or pathing for you, it actually just works to confuse you as where you're supposed to go or why you're being shown anything. There's no real focus on objectives, it's just more to display the graphic designer's prowess, I guess. And while I normally don't point out music until toward the end of a game review, I want to point it out early so that you're subjected to it just as much as I was. Even though Eekeemoo has 4 different worlds and 4 different party members to choose from throughout the entirety of the gameplay, it only has one soundtrack. That's right, only one soundtrack for the entire game, all worlds, all characters, all events. And it pretty much only has 1 or 2 notes. I don't know if this was done to save budget, but the game did come out at full price a couple years back and then had subsequent patches and has now been released on a new platform selling for $5 per copy. So I'm assuming that one of those patches could have been music at some point, and I don't know why that wasn't a choice. Moving into the actual gameplay though, Eekeemoo is actually at some level somewhat aesthetically pleasing. I would probably give it a 5 out of 10. It is innovative and the characters are kind of cute, but it has an absolutely atrocious light balance, and there are plenty of bugs and glitches in the video panning and the actual character sprites movements. As you run around the level, engaging enemies, avoiding traps, and jumping over pitfalls, you really quickly begin to realize how poorly the physics engine in this game was designed. This becomes probably the most exaggerated when using jumping elements to move through water areas. The jump areas allow your character to jump higher and further, but it doesn't allow you to use a dynamic jump movement. So if you do incorporate the actual jump button into a jump pad, you'll likely reduce the distance you can actually jump and fall into the water. Additionally, there are times where if it's difficult to beat an enemy, you can just stand on top of its head and mindlessly mash the attack button. The game controls are really simple in Eekeemoo, however. You can run around, change characters, attack, defend, and dodge, which are all really great, especially for this type of an adventure. The problem is, though, they weren't really designed very well. Eekeemoo, the ninja-like Eekeemoo, is actually really slow when dodging, so it's better to use his impenetrable defense. And despite being a dual-wielding ninja blade Eekeemoo, Eekeemoo's attack is absolutely flawed, and I don't mean that just for his character, I mean it for all characters in the game. The enemy's damage boxes as well as the character's hitboxes are exactly 1-to-1 perfectly matched, which means as soon as you're in range to damage, you're in range to get damaged. And as enemies' main attacks are by mobbing, that means that as soon as they approach you, you're taking damage, and as soon as you're able to deal damage, you're taking damage. This was slightly counteracted by the fact that health and items drop at an obscenely high rate. So as you're taking an unreasonable wealth of damage merely from engaging the enemies, you're also being revived at the same time. However, it is impossible to actually tell what some of these items do. Hearts fill up your health, which is obviously your HP, but below that, small blue orbs fill up a potion-looking bottle. This meter seems to go down the more you use your defense. And the meter beyond that is the purple skull, which is filled up when you pick up purple skulls. However, this meter is constantly declining no matter what you do, so all I can think is maybe it adds toward a critical window since your character seems to sparkle to a slight extent as soon as this bar is full. Other than mob enemies, there are stationary objective type enemies such as the laser spinning revolving tower. These types of enemies have absolutely no ability to dodge, but you can't dodge them either. The only thing you can do is walk up to them and sponge up the damage until you can hopefully hit the button 2 or 3 times to shut it off. So the combat dynamic is more of a battle of wills than actually any sort of skill. Moving on to bosses, despite being larger than the entire screen, they don't really deal too much damage. As a matter of fact, they deal just about as much damage as other random enemies in the game. But again, beating them doesn't really rely on skill. This is where the game actually develops more of a puzzle element. You're supposed to discover what thing activates choose what sort of a weakness in order to hit it a few number of times in order to drop the main boss's HP. Attacking it generally does absolutely no damage, and there's no way to remove other obstacle elements in the screen. So boss fights are less about dodging and combat and actual developing of skill with this ninja character, and are more about sponging up hits and avoiding obstacles and trying to figure out what key element you need to smash in order to beat the game. Which seems to be pretty par for the course in Eekeemoo all in all. Honestly, the combat system is a complete button mash. The best way to push through these levels if you actually still want to play this game is to get into a crowd of enemies holding down your defense until they swarm you in a massive amount of numbers, and then just start button mashing them all in omnidirectional attack. Despite the potential that Eekeemoo had to be a really classic fantasy open world adventure game, and despite its price, it is still too fundamentally flawed to actually be enjoyable. Even though I could get past the faulty combat dynamics and the glitches in the visuals, I could not get past the one-tone soundtrack that repeats throughout the entire game. Now, the game is short enough to actually beat in one sitting and tough it out and just get past it, but why would you want to subject yourself to that? But as always, this is just my 2 cents. It's my opinion as a gamer, so if you feel differently, please invest in it, play it, have fun with it, but coming from a few years of experience, you might want to avoid this one. Anyway, that about wraps up the review of Eekeemoo on the Switch eShop. I'm sorry that it was so negative, but this is one that I want people to be aware of. I thought it was going to be one of those really unique, immersive indie stories, and boy was I wrong. So if you found the video helpful or at least entertaining, feel free to throw me a comment or a like to show your support, and don't forget to click that little bell icon when you subscribe to stay updated with the newest videos. Anyway, this has been Budget Gamer, and as always, thanks for watching.